Good morning.
Sir.
Thank y'all for coming today. Welcome. I hope everyone had good traveling grace coming and hopefully gone as well. We definitely want to welcome everyone to the meeting today. We want to recognize a few of our guests that we have. We recognize our best board member, Mr. Ronnie Morris. Thank you for being here. Also, just want to do a few announcements before we get started. Some of you may remember Mr. Brian Lezoon, former superintendent in Iberia Parish, and also president of the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents. Jeff Davis. Jeff Davis, and he passed away recently, and if you didn't know, I just wanted to make you aware of that, and definitely want to have his family in our prayers, and just again want to recognize him for his contribution to public education in Louisiana. Also, we want to be able to recognize our superintendents here that have, we want to congratulate them for anyone in here that have semifinalists or finalists for Principal of the Year, Teacher of the Year, Student of the Year, or New Teacher of the Year. We want to definitely, I know you're going to be celebrating your people, but we want to also acknowledge them, thank them for their hard work that they've done this year for our children in Louisiana. So thank you and congratulations to each of your people in your respective districts. So thank you again. And so as we get started, just a reminder for anyone in the audience, if you would like to have comments, please turn your public comment card to Ms. Davis. And also, council members, please, when giving comments, just don't forget to speak into the mic clearly. And so we'll begin. Roll call.
Mr. Alexander.
Here.
Mr. Byler.
Here.
Mr. Claxton. Not in attendance. Dr. Coker is excused. Mr. Corley.
Here.
Mr. DeVilliers.
Here.
Dr. Gorey is excused. Dr. Gray. Not in attendance. Mr. Javia. Not in attendance. Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Dr. Joffrion.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Dr. Joseph.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy is excused. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Dr. Narcisse.
Here.
Dr. Ortling has a proxy. Superintendent Johnson. Here. Mr. Powell.
Here.
Ms. Tanner. And Mrs. Trostclair. Here. Dr. Williams. Here. Mr. Williams. Not in attendance. Okay. You got a quorum.
Thank you. I think we recognized our guests of 1.2. But do we have any other additional guests that I may have overlooked this morning? Thank you. Item 2, approval of minutes.
Motion.
February 22nd. We have a motion to approve minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes. New business, item 3.1, consideration of an update report regarding computer science education.
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive. We have a second. Dr. Brown.
Thank you. Today's, I should be careful saying this, but today is a relatively light agenda day for Superintendent's Advisory Council. We may regret that later. But at this point, we want to ask Ashley Townsend from our team to come up and just talk a little bit about the computer science education work that's happening. Really, this is an item that is not something that we have to solve for today. We're just trying to introduce some information to you early so we can get some feedback, share some information about some other feedback opportunities that will be coming, because this is new for us as a state, and there's a lot of work that has to be done at the elementary and certainly the high school level, and so we just want to maintain an ongoing conversation about how to best move forward with computer science. So Ashley, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. Many of you know that 2 acts were passed last year related to computer science education. One of them made certain computer programming courses able to meet the top foreign language requirement, and that will begin with the 26-27 graduating class. So that's your incoming group of freshmen. And if you have questions on that, you can reach out to Jessica Valalongo to help with any implementation on that. The other act was Act 541, and that was the Computer Science Education Act. What that one did, it established the Computer Science Education Advisory Commission. This group has been tasked with developing a set of recommendations that they'll present to Bessie before the end of the year for establishing a kindergarten through 12th grade computer science education plan in Louisiana. This has to address content standards, the coordination of computer science between elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and the workforce, whether there should be a high school graduation requirement, what teacher training is needed, what funding opportunities are needed. All of those considerations will be part of the commission's report to Bessie. After that, Bessie will direct the development of that statewide computer science plan, and then the development of standards for kindergarten through 12th grade will begin, training programs, etc. So one of the commission's first tasks on the list in the act is to work with administrators and systems to identify gaps. What is out there now? What are you providing right now in terms of computer science education? What's needed? This is a chance for us collectively to decide what this vision for statewide computer science should look like, and for all of you to inform what those recommendations will be that we can bring back to the commission to help them determine what this plan should include. So we have established, or the department, in working with the commission, has set up several listening sessions. We've had some with teachers, some with post-secondary leaders, some with industry and workforce leaders, but we want to have a listening session specifically for system leaders to get your input on this. We'll update you on several topics that the commission has talked about so far, and ask for your input on some specifics. For example, what types of teacher training do you think would be most appropriate for your teachers and for these different grade levels that are addressed here? What types of certifications that will work for you and your systems, and things that will be good because you know where you're coming from right now and you can help us establish that vision for where we're going. So we'll have this system leaders focused listening session. It'll be right after the April system leaders call, and there's a unique Zoom link for that. So it's on the slide for you, but you can also reach out with questions. We're asking if you will invite your fellow system leaders to attend this. That we would appreciate that help in getting the word out, because we really do want to make sure that we hear from everyone and get all of those thoughts that we can bring back to the commission. Happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions from the panel? Do you have any questions from Thank you. Excuse me. All right. We have a motion to receive in a second. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.2, consideration of an update report regarding the Stronger Connections Grant Program. Dr. Brown. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Do you have a motion to receive? Motion. Second to receive, and we have a second. Dr. Brown.
Thank you. We're really excited about this. We are receiving $21 million from the federal government as part of the Bipartisan Safer Schools Act. We know that one of the most important things that we can do is in regards to access control within your facilities. We also know that some of our schools were built a long time ago, whenever that was not at the forefront of the conversations. Now, we all know that if you're building new schools today, that's one of the first things that you're thinking about is how do we control for access in and out of the building. And we know that these projects are often expensive, and so what we wanted to do with these particular dollars is say, we want to fund 42 $500,000 grants because we wanted to put substantial money in the field because we know these projects can be expensive, where you can do minor remodeling, maybe at the front of the school. Maybe you need to work on exterior locks around the building. Maybe you want to do perimeter fencing or security cameras. So anything relative to access control really are the things that we are making eligible with this particular program. We had a great opening call last week, and we had, at one point, I think we had 183 people logged on to the call, so that was great. We want to turn this around relatively quickly. The goal is, if it would be for us to be able to allocate funds this summer at some point, hopefully in that June board meeting. Now, that may not happen, but that's kind of what we're shooting for right now. And if you have specific needs that are relative to access control, we encourage you to make an application. Essentially, we have set it up where basically systems across the entire state are all eligible. But Alexi, you want to make a few remarks here?
Yeah, sure. So,
And Burnell.
Good morning, everybody. Like Dr. Brumley just shared, we're very excited to share information with you about the Stronger Connections grant. This optional grant opportunity is in addition to some efforts that we've made recently, like our partnership with Crime Stoppers to make it easier for our students, educators, and families to prevent acts of violence at school through the use of an anonymous reporting app. In fact, just last week, Crime Stoppers presented Dr. Brumley with the Award of Excellence in School Safety and Prevention. We, as a state agency, are focused on school safety. Last year, we held our first School Safety Summit with over 800 attendees consisting of educators and first responders who came together to collaborate on keeping students safe. And we're very much looking forward to our second annual School Safety Summit that will take place early this summer. To give you some specifics on the Stronger Connections grant program and in relation to some of the questions that we've been receiving since last week's webinar, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was signed into law in June of 2022. This act specifies that state education agencies must make competitive subgrants to high-need LEAs for activities to support safe and healthy students, and requires us as a state agency to define high-need LEA based on poverty rates and additional characteristics laid out by ED for the purpose of eligibility. Here in Louisiana, our definition of a high-needs LEA is an LEA with a poverty percentage of 50% or greater and one of the following. So either a chronic absenteeism rate greater than the state average of 19.4% according to school year 2021-2022, or an LEA that was significantly impacted by a natural disaster or traumatic event within the last 3 years. Dr. Brumley announced last week that our Stronger Connections grant program will focus on reinforcing single points of entry on school campuses and hardening school perimeters. Projects for this may include surveillance cameras, metal detectors, or other physical security equipment to enhance security at a single point of entry. Applications are now available through EGMS with a submission deadline of April 3rd. Systems will be notified of their application status, like Dr. Brumley just shared, the week of May 1st. And I'd like to reiterate that this is a school system grant and can be split among schools within a district, with the availability to focus on those schools within the district that have the greatest safety needs. The purpose of this grant is to maximize investments to complete significant work to secure perimeters, and as again, he said, will be awarded as 42 $500,000 grants. We're excited to provide this additional opportunity to our LEAs and are committed to supporting school safety efforts.
Oh, no, this one. Feel any questions you may have? All right, do we have any questions?
I have a question. Do you have a already generated list of, I'm sorry. Do you have an already generated list of LEAs, districts that do qualify for that third significantly impacted?
We do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we can reach out to,
Absolutely.
all right, thank you.
And
But just for clarity, any combination of those
Yes.
situations qualify.
Yes, with the exception, the poverty rate of 50% or greater, that is a requirement, and either of, you can have the absenteeism rate, yeah, or the traumatic event.
I think we can all agree in the room that we've experienced a traumatic event over the last few.
Yes.
Where can we access the list of districts?
Yeah, you can reach out to us at Mike Como at, is it schoolsafety@la.gov, I believe.
did we get that?
Healthy schools at la.gov. Thank you. There you go.
Yes. It was in the last webinar, they, when you could reach out for questions.
I have a question. So for this grant, we can, the latitude, we can use it on anything that goes around security agencies, is that correct?
Yes, that's going to be the focus of the grant in Louisiana.
Is there any limitations on what you can't use it on?
Well,
I think we're dealing on a case-by-case basis because it's kind of broad. So some of it's not really just major construction.
I'm sorry, one last question. The allocation of it, is the allocation based on how many projects, or is it just one big allocation based on the size of the district? How distribution would happen?
It's $500,000 grant, so that's what will be awarded.
And minor construction is allowable. So minor remodeling, minor construction is allowable.
Am I correct in saying that the funds from the grant can't be used to pay for school resource officers?
Well, with this particular grant, our focus in Louisiana is the single
It's just
point.
one-time money, correct?
Yes, it is.
But if Mr. Corley only needs 100,000, can I have the rest of his?
I was gonna say you buy 12 door locks for $5,000. Don't spend it all at one place.
I'd just like to say how much we appreciate the opportunity to do it. We've been watching, waiting for when some of these funds for safety and security that for schools was, we knew it was approved from the Fed, when it was, how it's going to be presented to us. So thanks for opening that up for us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Can the funds be spread out over a number of years, or does it have to be spent at, what's the timeline?
Right. The end date of the grant, I think it was 20, we'll confirm it, but I think it's like 25. But let us confirm it.
Yes,
for you.
that's confirmed.
So, because if I heard correctly, I'm sorry, are there any other questions? I forget sometimes. Is there some limitations in terms of, because I heard some discussion about minor construction, are there limitations in terms of the Bacon Act, in terms of being able to use those dollars, so that always comes up?
Yes, so you've been dealing with the ESSER funds.
Yes.
Yes, but anytime you're dealing with any kind of construction work, you have to abide by the Davis Bacon Act. Those rules still apply. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Yes. Yes, Martin.
I just want to share an observation that I had, because I've been through different schools in the state and out of state as well, that I thought was a really clever, innovative approach here. One of the schools that I visited, they went through the single point of entry. All the kids in every school I've been in this state are wearing the necklaces with the badges. Some of them have barcodes on them, some of them don't. I've seen the ones with the barcodes, they use them to charge for lunches, check out library books. I've even seen one school in the state that knows how many kids are in the bathroom right now, based on the barcode. So there's been some really good practical uses for it. But in the school that I saw, they were using the barcode to record attendance. So when kids are coming through that single point of entry, you know which kids are in the building or not. So that gives me an accurate count of attendance, as well as addressing the safety concern here. In the event of a safety event, you know in real time who's in the building and who's not. So I just wanted to put that out there, an observation that I made that you might consider. Thank you.
One other question. So with the grant, will there be, will the department be able to selecting the group, all the grants, or will there be a third party that will be selecting this?
So it is a competitive process, and we'll be doing the reviews internally, and there'll be with any competitive grant, there are a number of reviews, eyes looking at it, and then we'll make a final decision from the agency.
I just wanted to add to what he was saying that there will be an opportunity, because I feel like we're going to get these questions, for our LEAs, if they've submitted an application, to update, revise, or resubmit based on the feedback. So we will be providing that opportunity as well.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.3, consideration of revisions to bulletin 7.6,
Louisiana standards for state certification of school personnel regarding educator credentials and technical edits. Have a motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Motion received. Second. Dr. Brown?
Yeah, thank you. So we are continuing to look at areas where we can streamline the certification process. What we're bringing you today is not something that we're taking to the board at the next meeting. We're just trying to put some information out there, get some responses to it, get some thoughts on it. But just to put it in perspective, you know, roughly 10 years ago, the department was receiving around, we'll just say 20,000 applications for certification a year. If it tracks like it's been tracking the last few weeks, we would be over 50,000 this year. So certification has gotten really complicated over a period of time. And so what we're looking at is we're continuing to look at ways where we can deregulate and streamline. And so these are some additional opportunities we think that might fit there. But we wanted to provide that information to you and get some early feedback before we move forward. And so Christy's going to kind of share some of that information.
Good morning. So as Dr. Brumley mentioned, in an effort to kind of streamline and simplify and make it easier for some of our educators, we're looking at different kinds of changes to certification policy. Some of those changes include the information that you see here, the reinstatement criteria, the evaluation and experience requirements that include some changes around military and military spouses, OFAT renewal, non-public certification, artists and talented endorsements, edits to duplicate certifications for personnel that hold licensure with another licensing agency already. And then, of course, we want to align and take care of some technical edits, align like geometry and algebra to make sure that our language is the same in all of those areas, align our literacy training requirements in all of our areas. And then, of course, there's a host of technical edits that we're going to make as well. Happy to take any questions. You should have backup documentation that has our what we're proposing. So if there's anything you have questions about, we have to answer that.
I have a question. With the literacy training requirements, can you unpack that a little bit in terms of how that will look with the certification process?
Sure. So the literacy training requirements were included in the legislation in the past few years. We updated policy last year. There are some laws that specify the different options that educators can have according to how they are prepared. Traditional teachers have one option, alternately prepared teachers have different options. And so we're just making sure, there were some that we left out last time in June, we're just making sure that all of those places look the same according to the legislation. So it's really more of a technical edit.
Okay,
there.
so is it elementary where we're looking at science of reading literacy?
Yes, the science of reading competencies were adopted last June.
Right.
And so we're aligning all of our reading requirements for both initial certification and add-on certification to make sure it aligns with that piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you.
And take your time with this, you know, take it back to the office, look at it, share it with your HR director, give us feedback. This is not something that we're looking to do next week. It's just the next set of potential solutions to help streamline processes.
And it's a lot, so take some time.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Could you give us a little bit more regarding the OFAT, what the intent is regarding that?
Sure. For that policy, what we've seen with educators over time is there are no limitations. And well, first of all, policy allows for certain areas, like special education areas that require more coursework, more testing, to have extensions of an OFAT. They can go to an OFAT 4 or an OFAT 5. Currently, most OFATs are for 3 years. We've seen a lot of educators kind of fall into the trap of not getting things done and applying for the extension of the 4, and then it gives them only 2 years left to finish the rest of those requirements, and they're ending up having to go to the Teacher Certification Appeals Council for more time. So we're trying to put some restrictions in there before they get that 4 or 5. That would say that before they get that extension, you need to have like 50% of the requirements, and that's kind of in alignment with our appeals process in policy. And so we're just trying to align that so that it kind of protects the educators from falling into that trap of leaving themselves only 1 or 2 years to finish all of those extensive requirements.
Thank you.
Hey, just one quick question. So with these proposals in mind, are we looking at neighboring states to see that our suggested changes may be in alignment with those? I know we have some issues along the borders of reciprocity and 2 states not agreeing upon certification. So we keeping that in mind at all?
We sure are. We're constantly looking at what other states are doing, what other states are doing legislatively and policy to try and simplify it and make it simpler for educators to come in and out, especially for military spouses. And that's one of these changes here to make sure that we can accommodate that. We have bases in Louisiana, so we want to make sure that we include those educators there.
Yeah, I had something similar to Mr. Jenkins, but our HR director, one thing that came to questions around the OFAC. And there's so many different reasons that you have somebody on the OFAC, right?
Sure.
You could be having somebody on the OFAC because they're actually pursuing one certification in that area, they're already certified, and they want to move in that direction. I was a math teacher and I was on the OFAC a lot, because they thought that I could teach things like physical science and things like that very easily, because I'm certified there. So, and I did, as much as you can. I don't want you to think I did a bad job. So, anyway, so the OFAC, again, I don't want to overcomplicate this. I know we're only working this, but that was the concern that we had, because there's so many different reasons you have to go on OFAC. You've been on OFAC for a few years and then back on one again. Because you just have this dangling course out there in a high school setting that you need somebody to pick up.
Sure, we didn't change the initial requirements for the OFAT at all. It's still a 3-year certificate. This would only be for those areas that currently have the ability to extend beyond that 3 years. And it's generally those special education areas, if that helps to clarify.
One last question from me. The counselor certification, and the reason I'm asking is just for some clarity for myself. It's tough finding counselors right now. And so what considerations are we giving in terms of maybe encouraging or, I hate to use, I don't want to use the wrong word. So encouraging more people to get into counseling to be able to help us in our respective school districts.
So there are actually several different options, and it depends on the kind of counseling that you're looking for there. This particular piece of school counselor, we're just moving it to the appropriate section of policy because it is considered a teaching area and it is renewable with effectiveness. We are trying to streamline and get rid of a lot of the redundant language in policy. So this particular piece just looks at moving it right now, but we are involved in more extensive conversations around school counselor and mental health counselor. We're just not ready with policy suggestions for those yet. But we do expect, after we have more extensive conversations with stakeholders, to have some sort of change around counseling. We're just not there yet.
Yes.
So I realize, and I'm grateful that y'all are bringing this to us, so we do have time to really work through it and things like that. Do you sort of have a timeline right now? What's your goals?
Well, this is a lot in this document that you have here. Some of them may come at different times than others, depending on what is exactly ready and how much stakeholder engagement we've received. And once we feel like it's completely ready, we'll bring it. So some of these technical edits may come in the next BESI meeting or two, but some of them may be a little bit longer because they need a little bit more stakeholder engagement. And then we have the whole thing to throw in the mix of legislation that's happening across the street. So some of it may be impacted by that, so we may not bring it until after a legislative session.
So when you say the next BESI meeting, the one in April, is any of this one there?
Well, we still have to make those decisions about what we feel like is ready for April.
I would say no. I mean, that's why we're here. We want to do this. Yeah.
I just want to know.
And then we also want to give consideration to, what bills may or may not be filed legislatively, how that all plays into all this. But you know, when we were talking about like, let's get some of this out early, so we can go ahead and you guys can socialize with your HR director.
Well, thank you for doing that. And if something does land in April's destiny, we'll know in enough time to have some feedback or either.
Sure.
And you've been working with the HR director on this.
Yes.
So everybody. And I would appreciate maybe doing it one time and some here and some there, because it all gets crossed over in the notice of intent process.
Right, we don't want to have,
Trying to be mindful of that.
yeah, that's why it's so big. We held off on bringing policy before. And so these are, you know, we do want to bring them all at once so that no particular area is on notice of intent at the same time. That's when you run into issues. And that's why some of these technical edits need to be made.
Superintendent Alexander, if something changes, I will call you directly, but I do not anticipate this one. Happy to serve.
That's all he wanted was special treatment.
So the temporary employment permit had me thinking about the temporary authority to teach. Is there any considerations around that, or is, you know, because we have a teacher shortage, maybe extending something or changing something with that to allow more time for individuals to take the test and be successful in passing it, or?
So we did make some changes to the TAT last year around quite a few things. Of course, the Praxis one was removed as a requirement for certification in general. We did tweak some of the language. Originally, the language was that they had to have 2 attempts at the exams within the validity of that TAT certificate. And so we tweaked that language to where it included only those 2 attempts since the last issuance or renewal. So if it expired or something like that, so no one was caught up within that specific timeline, or say they left and came back, we were seeing some issues with that. So we did expand that last year. We haven't considered the TAT, but that's good feedback, and we can take that down and see, you know, what other options we may consider. It's currently valid for 1 year at a time. It is renewable with effectiveness and those attempts at the exams. It's limited in policy to 3 years right now. Now, we do see educators who struggle with the exams. They sometimes go to TSAC, the Teacher Certification Appeals Council, to have additional time added on the TAT. So there are some options with policy, but we haven't looked at it, but we can take a look at it again.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Okay. We have a motion to receive and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
And item 3.4, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 112, Louisiana Connectors for English Language Learners regarding the Excel graduation policy and potential associate waiver.
We have a motion to receive.
So
We have a motion. Second.
Someone else to make the motion, or proxies can't make the
Yeah.
motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Oh, okay, Mr. Byler, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries. We have a motion and a second. Dr. Brown.
Thank you. For a couple of years now, this group, I don't know if they're known as Excel, but they've been working on this Excel pathway for some time now. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and they're very passionate about this particular space. And at our last meeting of the state board, we had a board member ask us for them to be allowed to give a presentation on their proposal to the entire board. And so that happened at the last meeting, and at that meeting there was a vote taken by our board to direct the department to develop policy language that matched the intent of the Excel proposal. The board did not vote on adopting that proposal, or the board did not vote on any type of waivers for EL students at that meeting, but they asked the department to develop a policy that aligned to the proposal made by the Excel group. And so we have done that, and we have not made recommendation on this particular item. It was not a department item. It was included at the request of a member of the board. But what we do think is important is that because it is such a significant policy proposal and shift, that we go ahead and take some time to get some thoughts and feedback from this group. And so that's what we're going to do today. Ashley, I think you're going to come up and explain a little bit more of this and provide some information. And certainly, I think it's a dialogue that we need to have here around how this moves, how this could move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. So yes, the board directed LDOE to bring back recommendations to April. And so I want to overview the main components of the proposal and then just open it up for you all to discuss, ask questions. I'm going to take notes. We have been doing a deep dive into the research and the practices of other states and our own state statutes that inform this. But we are very eager to get your feedback and thoughts and reflections on it as well. So just to highlight for you, this would apply to students identified as English learners during or after the 7th grade. So their language acquisition plans, or for us right now, our law plans could include this. And this would include how you support these ELs, how you provide programming for them. And then if their trajectory for English mastery is predicted to extend beyond their senior year, that local team could designate that student as qualified for a portfolio-based assessment in each LEAP 2025 course. So these students would still participate in traditional assessments, but they would also create this portfolio throughout the year that would then be scored by a team at the district level, and the rubric for that scoring would be developed by LDOE. Additionally, for students scheduled to graduate by August 31 of this year, there's an ask to extend that same waiver that was applied to students in response to COVID for the last couple of years to English learners who will not be able to graduate due to not passing one or more of the LEAP 2025 assessments, but who have met their trajectory toward English language proficiency. So in lieu of those assessment requirements, they could either achieve an ACT score of 17 or that completion of 20 hours of summer learning in each lacking subject area. So like I said, we are deeply digging into the topic, state practices, policy, etc., but we are very interested in your thoughts and feedback on this as well, and I'll take any questions or feel free to discuss.
And actually, this is an alternate pathway, right? Is it like adding like we did with April Dunn, it's adding a pathway for
That's right.
graduation.
Any questions?
I just, there were, somebody sent us the actual Excel presentation, I guess that was sent to the board at the last meeting, and it's a lot of information in there that was really compelling, actually. I guess there's a lot of other kind of conversations that could spur off of that, and I don't want to get into an accountability conversation about this, but I mean, obviously I think looking at the specific needs of our English language learners is important, and comparing what we do to some other states was really eye-opening. And so since there are some potential policy considerations there, is there going to be a time when either whoever put this presentation together is going to be able to speak to us as superintendents about kind of some of the research that they put into this? Before any policy recommendations go. Because I think there's even a recommendation right now to include some potential graduation waivers or follow some of these recommendations even for this year, isn't it?
Right, yes, so that would be for
So
this.
keep in mind, this is a group of citizens, educators that have made this proposal. This is not department staff. This is not our staff. We're simply providing you. Our board asked us to take that proposal and turn it into policy language as if they were going to vote on it. And so that's what we're doing. And like you said, you have the backup information that they provided.
Those individuals are present here today, they're going to be speaking, but I know that's not a deep dive into the background.
I mean, I haven't had a moment to study it,
Right.
all the ins and outs, but definitely I think just for sake of, if there's going to be any potential policy changes that we would have an opportunity to maybe dig into a little bit more beforehand. So are you anticipating some of this going before the next BESI meeting, the policy?
Yeah, and I'm sure you can have, you'll get contact information if you want to visit with those individuals, maybe beyond this meeting.
If it does turn out that there's a more extended timeline on that, that would include another meeting, we would be happy to share with you all the research that we're doing and looking into if it winds up extending over a longer period of time than the April meeting.
Thanks.
So Ms. Ashley, so I appreciate that you're looking at what other states, of course, are doing related to EL learners. Is it my understanding that we are one of 8 states that require exit exams?
That is what the group reported at BESI. Our team is digging into that a little more deeply to determine how exactly that lines up. We have a 50-state scan underway right now looking into state policy. So we're working on confirming that.
And of those 8, as is my understanding, that Louisiana is the only one that does not have yet an alternate pathway for EL learners.
That was the assertion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm excited about this. I think, I'm an English language learner, so to watch us move towards this direction, I think is really great. Language barriers impact so much all the other things. I think the question will be how does it impact other policy, but I really think this is a great thing. Full support in our space. We have many English language learners in these parameters, so I think this will be a tremendous help for us.
It's been very interesting to see the depth of research that some of these states did into their own policy practices and assessments before they put some of these requirements into place or these opportunities into place. There was a study in Texas, as a matter of fact, where they linked their English learner assessment with their state assessment with the number of years students are in the state to determine accurate trajectory levels, and they put so many supports in place around having bilingual education programs available to students where a certain number of students in the district speak a different home language. And so that was one thing that I think has really hit home for us too, is just the amount of research that these states did into their own programs ahead of adopting some of these alternate pathways. So we are trying to look into that, but I believe some of these studies are ones that took a year or more to complete, so it's a deep dive that we're conducting right now.
I want to just piggyback on what Dr. Narcisse just said, and I'm too excited that we're moving in this direction. I wonder if it's enough. Our amazing team, a couple of our members are here today, did share our EL data at our committee of the whole meeting this week, and we are not doing our ELs very good service right now in terms of making improvements and truly achieving that language acquisition. And I do know that some of this is related to the talent problems that we all are having. But one of the things that I wonder about, and I'll have to go back and unpack all of the components of this, but when I look at all of the other criteria for completion, it seems like a lot, and I wonder too what this looks like in terms of what other states are doing to address this challenge.
So some states have an appeals process in place where any student, not just English learners, can appeal an assessment graduation or an assessment requirement for graduation and complete portfolio style activities to serve as an equivalent for that assessment. So some states have that sort of option in place. Some states don't require the same types of content exams as Louisiana does. Some states make portfolio assessment options in place for students who are who have had interrupted formal education or who have only been in the country in U.S. schools for a couple of years. So the programs really vary a great deal, and that's again one of the things that we're studying.
To Dr. Williams' point, I mean, we definitely need to do a better job of service to this particular subgroup. When we look at data across the system last year, particularly, this was one of the subgroups where we did not see growth and recovery. It's one of the reasons why we went out and we sought out this pilot that we're doing around artificial intelligence and finance for EL students. I know many of you were engaged in that pilot. We send you your data on that all the time, and so we're really looking to see what happens there in terms of acquisition with the students who are in that particular pilot, so we're excited about that. Another piece I think that could be helpful is if the differentiated compensation component of the MOP were passed. One of the critical shortage areas probably to be identified would be foreign language. It is in some of our data already as a need. And so there might be opportunities there to compensate individuals in foreign languages at a greater rate, which might be helpful to incentivize them to work in the system. So we have to do a better job of serving this particular subgroup, regardless of this particular decision. Well,
Yeah, just would like to ask, I mean, I've seen some of the research. It's a lot. There's a lot of research. And up here I see 6 bullets. Is there anything that the department seems fundamentally that we are in different? I've heard their side, I've researched it, I've looked at it. Is there anything that the department is fundamentally in a different direction where we as superintendents can look at, you know, and like you said, it is a lot of research, but, and you're verifying some of it. Is there any particular areas that are of concern to the department?
I think one of the things for us is just the understanding that there are so many additional supports that need to be in place for these students. You know, why are they getting to the point of graduation but not able to pass some of these exams? What can we do to help them acquire English at a faster rate? Is there a way to accelerate that for students who do come into the country later on and don't have that same amount of time in an English learner program as their younger peers do? You know, what kinds of things can we do to help them get there? Because we do believe that it's important to know the language of the country you're in to be able to succeed in whatever you do next in life. So we want to make sure that these students are able to be successful. And I think that's been one of the big underlying questions is what can we do to help them make sure that they are successful in whatever they do next, beyond just whether they graduate or not. So it's really opened up a lot of questions into our programs in general and opportunities for improvement.
I think too, one of the, you know, I want to be sensitive in how this is conveyed, but I do think it's a fundamental shift in what we believe to be true about a graduate in Louisiana, because you are at the core of this is the question around the language of English, and if we do or do not do this, are we signaling to employers, are we signaling to universities that for a population of students in our state, we don't have an expectation that they have some level of English proficiency upon receipt of that diploma in Louisiana. And so I say that, I try to say it in a very sensitive way, but that is in many ways one of the root questions that has to be answered as people consider this policy. Is there an expectation that a graduate from a Louisiana school would have a certain level of English proficiency?
And I would just appreciate, I know that group is here, when you do get your 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I would like to hear your rebuttal to that, and just because I'd like to hear both sides of, I mean, I know they're going to speak, and so I would like to hear what their opinion of that. That's why I asked you to bring the fundamental. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Alexander?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting discussion. I'm glad we're having it. I think it's important that we solve this, and I think it's important that we do serve our EO population well so that they can pursue the dreams of their choice when they leave us in our school system. We had experience in my family where we had an individual that lived with us that was from Haiti. They had to pass a TOEFL to get into RPCC. I don't see that anywhere here. I don't know if that's another option, you know. In other words, there was a proficiency standard to be able to, not to get into RP, to get into Baton Rouge Community College here. And so I don't know if there's other things that we can consider here that might prove that they are post-secondary eligible to continue with either learning or workplace or career. I think that's the goal, right? We're doing any student a disservice to graduate them without some level of competencies to move on to post-secondary success. And those competencies I realize are at different levels, and I know that's what our goal is. So I mix that in my head right now about what should we be doing to make sure that we have done our due diligence in providing them a successful launch into the next step.
And I hear you, but I want to remind the group too that in advance of this position, I was the superintendent in Jefferson Parish Schools, where 8,000 of our kids, English was not their primary language, where we had over 2,000 kids, newcomers to the country, entering the system every single year. So, you know, I have a little bit of background in this space, and so I know it's a complicated issue that we're dealing with. That's why I'm a little nervous about it being rushed in any particular way, because I just feel like it's something that if we're approaching it, we have to make sure that we get this right in fairness to everyone. That's just.
Well, I appreciate that. I do think it's a measured approach that we need to be taking.
Right, and so I'm glad you said that, Dr. Brumley, because my thoughts on it is like, I do agree that something has to be done for, you know, this group of kids. Because I think about like if I didn't know how to speak English, but I was smart, right, I was smart, but the only thing that's stopping me is a test, right? So you're preventing me from moving forward because I don't have a grasp on the language, and so I definitely can't pass the test. So in a sense, I can't understand why it wouldn't take a short amount of time to correct the problem. Like why would it take all this time? The research has been done. You've started on some stuff. You know clearly that there's an issue. I'm like wondering why would it take a longer period of time to solve something that we already know what the issues are. Am I making sense? It's like, I don't know, it's like if I don't know how to speak the language, but I'm smart and I can, do whatever. Why are you preventing me from moving forward because I can't pass this test? Is it,
And
it
yeah,
doesn't seem fair.
and I think if the approach taken is of the same like paradigm as that, it's an easy, let's do it, let's get it done. But I don't know that everyone would agree with that particular viewpoint on it.
But why? What would be the bias that would prevent them from feeling that way? That because they can't speak English? I mean, that's a bias that I think needs to be pushed to the side and think more about the kids and what they need in order to keep moving forward. Because they're here, and it's not like you can take them and just say, you know what? It seems like unfair, like I come into this country, no, I don't know how to speak the language. You want to speak this language, pass these tests, and that will determine whether or not you're successful or not. I think that is rooted in bias, and I think we really need to push all those things on the side and focus on what really needs to happen for these kids.
Yeah, I'm just excited to hear that we are engaging with other states. Just this weekend, I was at the Council of Great City Schools in Washington, D.C., and as a matter of fact, the Secretary of Education of the United States, Cardona, was talking about how the demographic shifts is happening in the country. There are, as maybe you know, there are states that are way ahead of us in this space because of the populations have been much larger. I mean, I grew up in New York City, so so this is not a new curve, and with multiple kids come from multiple countries where they have had measures that have done well. So I always feel that we don't have to start from scratch. I know Dr. Brumley, you talk to other state superintendents across the nation. There are lessons we can learn in terms of how they've done there, whether it's accountability or practices, those things. And so I really think it's good that we kind of learn some of those lessons. We have Texas, that's kind of like a rock there, that have been doing this for a while. You got Florida, you got New York, you got North Carolina has done some accelerated work around that with populations similar to our demographics here. Louisiana is becoming one of the fastest states where people are moving to in terms of coming from other countries, especially with the Latino population. So I just think that, I'm just excited to hear that we're going to be engaging other places that have had experience in this, that answers a lot of these sets of questions where many of those kids who go through that process are actually successful in college. And so I just always say, you don't have to learn from zero, but I would just, strongly encourage. I would also, Paul, I know the Council of Great City Schools that deal with the 78 largest cities in the United States, who've had children from other countries for years, since, the early 60s. We don't have to learn from new. So if there's anything we can do to help push that, I sit on those calls too, talking to them about how we can accelerate as it pertains specifically to these backwards. But and Avis does that with New Orleans, so just, let us know.
Any other comments? Before we get public comments, I just want to add one thing. I want to do hop in this conversation. Again, I'm also excited about the prospects of this particular policy. Give a personal perspective, my family and I lived in Italy for several years, and so my younger kids, although we spoke English in our home, in school they spoke only Italian. And so when they came back home, it was a big transition for them because speaking Italian only in school and coming back home, again, we spoke English in our home, but it was a difficult transition for them in their early years. And so I can understand where some of our children, especially our EL population, are having those difficult transitions. And the same with my oldest. She speaks French. I'm the only one who speaks English in my own house. So we got all kinds of stuff going on there. But so I think it's pretty important that we research this. One question I did have in particular is when we look at the legal assessments, which ones are they tend to, I have an idea, but which ones do they tend to not fare well in? Is it the English and social studies in particular, or is it mathematics? I suspect that they do very well in mathematics. So that's my question, and then I'll kind of follow up.
Yeah, so just looking at that, kind of back to the envelope, most people would think, I think most people would think it was the English pair where the failure rate is the highest, but it's actually not. It's actually the U.S. history and biology pair. So there's a greater passage rate in the pair of English than there is U.S. history and biology. So I believe the proposal from Excel would waive all of the content area assessments, not just the English. So you would be waiving for U.S. history, biology, English, algebra, and geometry.
And my last question would be, when we're looking at this particular population of students, what typically is our drop-off rate of those students once they enter in to ninth grade? If you don't have that data, then we can. So that was my last question. Any questions from the public or any additional questions from the panel?
I have one more thing. I read somewhere in there where they talked about the graduation rate was low, but then something occurred and then the graduation rate went higher. Was it because of COVID? The last of those things, you saw them that they were able to pass. So,
But that was the case with all
with
of them.
everybody, right? But it greatly impacted them, right? Well, in everybody, but so are they at the end of the day? That's what they're really asking, is that stays in place?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the ask is for instead of EL learners having to pass their LEAP 2025s, that there could be substitution of a portfolio for that. And there was a request for this particular seniors that they would just get blanket waiver in the same way that the blanket waiver happened a couple of years ago.
What about the elementary?
It wouldn't apply to elementary students. It would just be students identified in 7th grade or later. And so the portfolio, for each of those LEAP classes, they would complete that portfolio throughout the year. It would address all of the content standards for that course. And so then at the end of the year, they would still sit for that LEAP exam, but then the portfolio could also be scored.
actually question, if this is going to this portfolio option, going to apply to this year, if we're looking at it for this year's seniors, isn't that something they should be working on their entire 4 years of high school? Is this something they can just throw together?
Right, this year it would be a blanket waiver where they could replace those assessment requirements with the 17 on the ACT or with the 20 hours of summer learning for each course. But then in subsequent years, when this policy applied, they would create that portfolio throughout the year. So if they had, like let's say they took biology in 10th grade and they still haven't passed that yet, and so they're coming back and taking that class, and next year is their senior year, they could create portfolios for whichever courses they're still missing assessments on. So this year would be the blanket waiver, and then the following years, the policy would be in place for portfolios.
And I just want to go back to my original question. So if these are policy recommendations that are coming and anticipated to be voted on by Bessie, again, maybe I should have read this a little bit sooner. I'm not saying for or against one way or the other. I think there's a lot of valid points being brought up today, but the motion today was to receive this report and this presentation. So I guess based on the question that Shan just asked, I guess that is the anticipation that when Bessie sees this again at the next meeting, that there's going to be a motion to implement the waiver and implement the recommendations of the Excel committee.
So the motion that we are following is to take the Excel proposal and translate that into policy for Bessie to consider, which creates the pathway long-term, but also to provide language to create the one-year waiver for this year's seniors.
So there is a possibility.
That would be considered in April by Bessie, and they could take a number of different actions as a result of being provided that policy.
I appreciate that, Larry.
I'm not trying to be contradictory, but I wanted to read the motion. The motion was to make policy recommendations in April regarding emergency consideration for currently Excel eligible students for 2023 graduation. The word waiver is not in the motion, actually. Not saying, I don't even know if Bessie has the authority to grant a waiver when it's not an emergency situation, so I hope that's being looked into. And then also, when we implement a change in pathway, we do it for a cohort entering. We don't usually make it for 23, 24.
The same year, right?
Yeah, so those are just some legal things.
And I think that's kind of where I'm grappling mentally with this, that this is, you typically can't bring something 1 month and boom, implement it, particularly when you're relating it to graduation, unless there is a graduation waiver put in place. From my experience, it's only been done in extreme emergency situations.
Right, our practice historically has been to start with a cohort group unless it's an emergency situation.
Ms. Davis, I would point out, and you clearly have the language, but I did ask Ms. Orange-Jones, who made the first motion, if her directive was for us to align directly to the proposal, and that's when she said yes. Because I wanted that level of clarity so that I better
Well, I looked at
understood.
I had their slide, and their slide didn't have the word waiver on there at all. And she kept referring to that slide, so that's what would confuse me.
Well, I'm still confused with it based on what you just read. The policy recommendations are supposed to come to the April board.
Yes, policy recommendations.
But there's no proposed policy recommendations in what we've received today, nor in the Excel presentation.
Right, and so we're still building that. Now, the waiver it wouldn't look like a waiver, it would look like policy language. So it would impact those 4 sections like the previous waivers, Bulletin 118 for the high school cohort, Bulletin 741 in sections 2318 and 2319 for the career and university diploma pathways, and then also 741 non-public. So it would be that piece of policy added to those 4 bulletins, but it would specify the eligibility of the students, and then it would have those same provisions in place as were put in place in bulletins previously with the ACT and the 20 hours and so forth. So it would be policy revisions to those 3 bulletins, 4 sections that would essentially waive the graduation requirements for those students, but it wouldn't just be a waiver. It would be
Without using the word waiver.
Correct.
So you're saying, so I'm looking at a policy revision here that was emailed, Bulletin 112. Is that what you're looking to?
Correct. So the recommendation from the group was to repurpose Bulletin 112, which currently houses our our connectors for English learners, which are those connector standards that connect their English learning path or journey to our content standards, to repurpose that bulletin as kind of a one-stop shop for all English learner-related policy, to take other English learner-related policy from other bulletins and house it there so that it would all be in one place. That's a proposal that we're still studying in collaboration with our registrar office, and the building that administrative code has certain rules and things that go along with it. So we're looking at what the impact of that will be, as well as our typical development process for administrative procedure, just to make sure everything's done as it should be.
So that is the bulletin that you're going to be, that's the starting point.
It could be, but another potential destination would be in Bulletin 741, which currently houses our alternative graduation pathway for students with disabilities. So it could also be a section there as well, since it talks about diploma pathways, and this would essentially be an alternate diploma pathway. So that's a possibility as well.
I don't know if the Excel group or the department would best be able to speak to this question relative to the eligibility requirements. And the descriptor says during or after the 7th grade. Why not a grade before, why not a grade after? Is there some particular premise behind identifying 7th grade?
That stems from research indicating that it takes 7 years for a newcomer to learn the English language when they enter in grade 6 or above, and it takes 5 years to learn the English, or to become proficient whenever they enter in K through 5. And so this would be giving students who, so essentially the idea is that if a student enters in 7th grade, they don't have 7 years to become proficient. So it would say that their trajectory toward English proficiency would extend beyond their high school graduation.
Superintendent Jenkins, it might be a good time to allow the Excel group to make their public comment.
That one more question.
Yes, and to Superintendent Jenkins' point, I think we certainly need to look at historic data as it relates to dropouts of this subgroup, to be able to make informed choices, to consider, based on that data, if what we've been doing is not working, then we certainly need to consider changes for these students. Thank you.
Public comment. Ms. Chavez? Don't pronounce your name correct. Apologies.
I'll try to fit it all in 3 minutes. Good morning, Superintendent, Superintendent Brumley. My name is Chiruba Chavez. I'm an educator here in Louisiana and also the co-founder of the Excel Graduation Pathways Coalition, which is now very, very exciting. It's become statewide. And the coalition seeks to, solve the one fact that in 2019, 80% of our students graduated, but only 41% of our English learners did. Right, and so, as educators and seeing kids every day, one less student, one less student, one less student, looking at other states, is it us? Am I doing something wrong in my classroom? What is going on? And we found out that Louisiana was 49th in the nation that year as far as the differential of graduation rates with English learners and everyone else. So we did some research and we looked at other states similar to us, states in the South, states who also required a performance metric on state assessments for graduation. There's only 8 of them. So we looked at Florida and Texas, found that Florida's differential was only 12 points, and Texas' differential was only 16 points. So in looking at those things, we saw what's going on in policy to help these students. And we found some of the things you all were talking about earlier today, some of those instructional recommendations for students, specifically in elementary around EL programming, bilingual education, and those great things. But there was language very specific to new arrivals. In the students who came to us as adolescents who don't have those 7 years to become proficient in English and language around those specific students and assessment requirements. So around the same time, COVID hit, right? And I got a call from my colleague Emma Merrill, and she said, Charles, all my kids graduated this year. All my kids. And so then we got curious. We're like, was this just her school? Was this around the state? And then we found that in that year and in subsequent years, so I'll give you a few examples. In Orleans Parish, right, graduation rate went up 3 points for everybody, but 7 points for English learners. Baton Rouge, graduation rate increased 4.7 due to the COVID waiver, but 22 points for English learners. Calcasieu Parish, graduation rate 3 points for total population. It jumped 19 points for English learners. And we saw that this was a statewide trend with 3.3 points for total population, but an 11-point jump for English learners. So we see that this one assessment is a barrier that is disproportionate to this population. Then we looked at our state policies, and we saw that already as a state, we acknowledge that by definition, English learners have a hard time being proficient on state assessments due to them being an English learner, right? And then we saw that in our policy, we expect students who come to us in grades 6 to 12, 7 years to become proficient. And this conflict in expectation is why we have this 40-point gap in graduation rate. And then I think that's my time, I'm gonna let Emma Merrill speak to the proposal itself.
Good morning, Superintendents. Good morning, Superintendent Bromley. Yes, my name is Emma Merrill. I'm the director of one of Louisiana's newcomer high schools. It's called La Sierras Academy. And right now we have about 50 students, and they're sort of my driving force behind why we do this work. And I want to tell you a little bit more about the policy itself. We co-founded the Excel Coalition, which is now statewide, which is very exciting. And you've heard some really important data around graduation rates in specific parishes, in other states like Florida and Texas. And obviously we want to do it better in Louisiana, while still holding a super high bar for what the diploma means, right, for this subgroup. Our coalition currently consists of multiple school boards across the state, Calcasieu Parish School Board, Lafayette Parish, New Orleans Parish, as well as some economic and business groups like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And we've created this based on feedback from all of those organizations. And so what the pathway is, I think there were some words that said it beautifully, is that students must still sit for the LEAP 2025 exam. We still want that data. We still want them to have the opportunity to pass those exams, right? They must still sit and still meet seat time requirements for their classes, just like we saw that they did during those COVID waiver years, right? They were passing classes, they were meeting seat time requirements even virtually. And to be eligible, like was said earlier, they have to arrive after 7th grade. We believe in the K through 6 school system in Louisiana to really prepare students for these exams and graduation. But when we know that a student arrives after 7th grade at 16, 17, 18 years old, we want to give them an alternative pathway that provides for that extended time of 7 years required for language development. In addition, they can complete a standardized portfolio for those courses to start within the first 30 days of those courses, and they can meet ELP's trajectory standards. So as you all know, ELP is an assessment of English language proficiency that happens separate from LEAP, and we want that data as well. We want to make sure kids are growing in English language proficiency, and this pathway would allow for kids and schools to spend more time with English language development instead of necessarily repeating the same biology class again and again, or repeating the same U.S. history class. They would allow for more time in their schedule for English language development. We also know that SPS scores don't factor into schools' achievement until students' 3rd year in the country. But yet we are denying diplomas to students when they're in their 1st and 2nd years in the country.
In addition, we know that this is a valid assessment measure. LEAP currently is a valid measure of content mastery if the student is still learning English. And they can show the mastery in a way that's divorced from language. We spoke about, the motion was that emergency consideration for currently Excel eligible students, as well as drafting bulletin language to codify Excel in the future. And we also have brought some one-pagers today if you'd like to learn some more. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate this dialogue.
Mr. Mayor, before you leave, because I feel you had a little bit more to say, so I'm going to ask you a question. So could you tell us a little bit more about the leak data that you were talking about? And could you expound on it a little bit more? And if there's a correlation between, or give us some additional data that you may have regarding biology and the history course in particular.
Absolutely. So I think Superintendent Brumley is correct in that for many kids in our state, U.S. history and biology pair is a barrier. However, we also know that some students who spoke in the Bessie meeting, their barrier is the English LEAP exam. So it does vary from student to student, but students have historically had the most success with the math exams, specifically students who are Spanish speaking and can't take that assessment in Spanish. That is the one language that it's provided in separate from English. But we also know that that means that the instruction in the class must be in Spanish to match the exam. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Atkins?
Good morning. Thank you, Superintendent Brumley. Good morning, Superintendents. I'm the one that reached out to most of you with the email on behalf of the two ladies from New Orleans. So we've been talking about data. Lafayette Parish currently has 56 EL seniors in our district. 23 of these students have not yet met their LEAP requirements. I'm an assistant principal at Acadiana High School where I oversee our ESL department. We have 5 of our seniors, 2 who spoke at the last Bessie meeting, who have not met their graduation requirements due to the LEAP assessment yet. But I want to draw your attention to 3 students who are currently juniors. All 3 of these students have come to our school system this year. They started in Acadiana after the beginning of our start date, most in September or October. These students have come from Colombia and Mexico. 2 of them are top university students. The one from Colombia came seeking political asylum because his father was kidnapped due to political beliefs. He was being thrown into the trunk of a car and then left out on the side of wherever he was dropped off. So the family left, sold their 2 businesses, and they're here. This student is a top university student who wants to go into the Air Force to possibly become a lawyer. Whenever he enrolled in our school, he came with 12 transfer credits. He is currently taking English 1, English 3, a reading ESL course, statistics, U.S. history, ROTC, and art classes. For his senior year, he's going to have to take English 2, English 4, geometry, probability and statistics, civics, world history, and his second ROTC course. This student is a very smart student. He loves science, he loves math, he has a future that he's passionate about. When we talked to this student, he said that he does not have to be forced to learn, he was already trained to learn. We have another student from Honduras. This student grew up in we would probably call it a shack. It was a one-room place that he shared with his brother, his younger brother. His mom was already in the United States. His dad had another family in Honduras, saw him maybe once a week and gave him some money, but it wasn't always the same amount of money. He and his brother did not always have enough to eat every week based off the money that Dad gave him. But Dad cared about his education enough to send him and his brother to a private school the last year he was there. This student wants to be an architect, and when we asked him why, he wants to own his own business and build a house safe enough for him to live in at night and to go to sleep when he puts his head down on his pillow. He came with 15 credits from his school in Honduras. He will have to take English 2, 3, and 4 next year, Algebra 2, Statistics, U.S. History, and World History. He's currently in English 1, a few ESL classes, Civics, World Geography, Art, and PE. This is my favorite student. This student comes to us from, he is also from Mexico. This student was enrolled in a preparatory school, which is like our version of high school, but he was on track to go to university there. He came to us with 23.5 credits. To earn a Jump Start diploma, he only needs 23 credits. By the time the student graduates, he will have 39.5 credits, more than double what our students typically get to earn a high school diploma. This year, he will sit for the English 1 LEAP test. He's in a technical writing class to help, and then next year, he'll have 2 additional English classes. One other thing that somebody mentioned that I'd like to address real quick. When it comes to passing the LEAP test, the reason that the students struggle in biology and U.S. history more, in order to pass those tests with approaching basic, they have to have a 22% of their questions correct to pass biology, 35% to pass U.S. history. When you look at algebra and geometry, algebra requires 13% of the answers to be correct, while geometry requires 11%. English 1 and English 2 require 19 to 20% to pass. This is based off of the spring 2022 LEAP testing. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. Ms. Ginger Richard.
Good morning, members of the council, Superintendent Brumley. My name is Ginger Richard, and I am the supervisor of language acquisition for the Lafayette Parish School System. And I come to you today, obviously, with support of the Excel pathway, but more importantly, to raise awareness on LDOE's current trajectory to English language proficiency and what that means for our students in our schools. For students first identified as English learners in grades 6 through 12, our current accountability system for the English language proficiency test, also called the ELT assessment, acknowledges that a student entering our districts with little to no English language may require up to 7 testing cycles to test transitioning or proficient. It awards schools points towards the assessment index based on student progress in the language. When students entering the United States test for the very first time, baseline scores are used to determine yearly targets, and schools grow to work on language while exposing students to content. Although this progress may be attainable for students in elementary school, like you guys said, we trust in the elementary process, the issue lies with our middle and high school age children. How many of our English learners who enter our schools between the ages of 15 and 17 have 7 years to take that ELT assessment to become and to show proficiency in that language? Students scoring transitioning, of course, is the ultimate goal. Those students will exit the English learner status and become English speakers. However, in 2019, only 4% of English learners in the state of Louisiana exited English learner status. This means that only 222 of the 5,000 English learners tested in the state reached proficiency. This brings me back to what Dr. Atkins talked about and the student from Acadiana who entered our school from Columbia at the age of 18 with little to no English and 12 high school credits. He just took the ELT assessment for the first time 2 weeks ago. And we are anticipating an emerging score due to his lack of language. According to LDOE's trajectory to English language proficiency, his goal to score transitioning or proficient is at the age of 24. Unfortunately, like many others, we all know the grim reality for that student at Acadiana High. This is why I come to you today, because we are currently setting goals for our middle and high school English learners that are impossible for them to attain. Schools need to be able to develop individual graduation plans for our English learners to ensure that they are able to show mastery of content standards, not using state assessments. We must do better for our most at-risk population of students that we are serving in the state of Louisiana. And I also want to talk about the idea that Superintendent Byler said about our Superintendent Brumley about the idea that we are putting students in the workplace who are not able to speak English. So I think that that is an industry, that is a corporation's decision when they interview a person for a specific position, whether or not they are deemed acceptable for that position. So as a language acquisition specialist for our district, if I am looking for a world language French teacher, I would not hire a teacher who did not speak the French language. So that's why we have employee services and human resources to help decide who is and who is not capable of performing that job duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the council or for our speakers?
I don't have a question.
question. I just want to thank the presenters for sharing that. Very compelling, and it just brings me back to my original comments that as much as this is a step in the right direction, I don't feel like it's enough. And also want to double down on what Dr. Narcisse said in terms of looking at what other states are doing. We're behind, and there's a lot that can be learned in terms of what's worked well in other states. And I appreciate the research and the depth of knowledge from our presenters, because and especially when you can do it through the lens of actual children in districts who are being impacted by decisions that are made here.
Is that a recommendation that you'd like to formulate in a motion?
Not at this time. I just think we need to continue to think this thing through in terms of knowing that, that we're not unique in terms of this being a challenge, and that other states are far ahead of us. So I just would encourage all of us to do our due diligence in terms of researching, and our presenters this morning have clearly done that in terms of not only quantitative but qualitative research that should inform our decisions.
Any other comments? Yes.
Can I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that we endorse the Excel pathway proposal. I find that we can push through things, and I've just, over the years, I've seen how certain policies, certain procedures, certain things have been put in place. You know, we always say that, you know, you're flying the airplane and it's not even fully built, right? If we can do things like that for other situations, I think that we definitely can do it for this population of kids. So I would like to make a motion that we endorse the Excel pathway proposal.
We have a motion by Dr. Joseph.
Second.
Second.
And you're talking for April, for the
I think that
The policy.
I think that the State Department, or whoever is putting this together, needs to act quickly. I do.
Can I comment on that? And I'm not going to disagree with your motion. I just, what we received today is what was on the agenda is considerations for revisions to Bulletin 112, Louisiana Connections for English Language Learners regarding this pathway policy. Have we seen those revisions? I just think I'm not against supporting the recommendations of Excel. I want to be clear about that. But as far as, we're not a policy-making committee. The representatives of the LDOE present information to us for consideration. We can choose to endorse, but this particular motion was to consider revisions to Bulletin 112, and I haven't seen those revisions. So I agree with much of what I've read from the Excel, and I look forward to engaging in a lot of conversation about that, because I think there is a space for that in our state, and I would actually probably broaden the conversation to some other student groups as well. But I just want to put that out there, that we have not seen what those particular revisions would be, and so I would like to see those before, and I would recommend we see those at the next Saturday meeting.
So is that a substitute motion? I'm just going.
Substitute motion or just?
Sure. I mean, I just would like, before I completely endorse something, I need to be able to see, these are policy changes. This isn't just, hey, this is a good idea, let's do something. And again, I'm not saying I'm against it, but policy is a big deal. We don't just say, hey, we're going to do this and expect a policy. So,
Mr. Chairman, not to be out of order, but am I correct in saying that the motion is not to endorse a revision to Bulletin 112, but to endorse the Excel pathway proposal?
That is correct. It's to endorse.
But you want to move quickly and have revisions in April?
As quickly, I'm going to say as quickly as possible, as quickly as I know that the State Department has moved in previous situations.
Jeffrey?
Having only received the Excel information last evening, it would be hard for me to endorse. Not saying that I don't believe that I didn't hear the extremely important and valuable information that was presented to us. And to reiterate what Mr. Powell mentioned, the LDOE is only saying, hey, we're considering these things. There's got to be a lot more discussion. And so I agree, I'd love to see LDOE come back and bring us more at our next meeting. But for me to endorse something that I got last evening and only skimmed would just be difficult.
I'd say in their defense, I've known about Excel for a while. I mean, this isn't anything new. They've been in, for a while. And they have submitted information to us, and I'll take a look at it. I know what it's about.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Davis, is it possible to reiterate what is the intent of the plan of Bessie at its April meeting relative to this?
The board made the motion to have policy recommendations come in April, and that's what Dr. Brumley said he's going to do, is bring those recommendations. I don't know if he's going to recommend the board approving it or whatever. I don't know if he's made that decision yet. So it's, the board could approve it if they have the language in front of them and it's been noticed appropriately. So, that's why I was trying to make clear, if you all are recommending endorsing it, the board needs to know that y'all would like them to approve this in April.
Because it's important that because we're looking at the kids who are going to graduate in May, right? There are kids who, because of, these restrictions, they are prevented from graduating. Do we want to prevent that from them from graduating? And then, I think it's a twofold thing, right? Looking at the kids for May, I think something definitely needs to be in place for them. And then maybe possibly looking at what needs to be done, for these rising seniors. Does that make sense?
So just for clarity, and Mr. Brown, so if I'm hearing correctly, we're endorsing their proposal and the recommendation for a waiver, but not necessarily things related to policy itself.
If I'm not mistaken, the things that they want to have happen for the kids who are graduating in May is the same thing that happened during the COVID. Is that correct? I don't know.
That's all you could do for this year, because the rest of the proposal is really about a portfolio over the course of the entire high school.
Well, of course the kids can't do that now once they're about to.
So that's what I'm saying. So what the plan would be for this year would essentially be waiving the graduation requirements.
Whatever that needs to happen to help these kids graduate, I think that needs to happen. I'm not, policy guru either, but I do know that the kids that need to graduate this year, we need to put something in place for them. And we also need to act quickly for the kids that are coming behind them. And we all know that in different situations, things can happen very quickly. So I don't see why this situation could not happen quickly as well.
Just along the same lines, I just don't want to rush into something that says, ultimately, if Bessie says we're going to pass a waiver, if that's the part that we want to endorse, that's what we endorse. I agree with the Excel policy, but I also agree that why is this something that we have to endorse in April? This needs to start with the cohort. We need to get it right, because we also have the debacle of accountability when we were at one place and they were in the other and we got nothing accomplished. I think you are correct, Dr. Joseph, this needs to be done quick. I agree with Mr. Powell when he says we need to come back with a written policy at the SAC meeting in June. Is that the next meeting, Ms. Shan?
Yes, sir.
That this is the exact policy. That does not stop anything. If we want to put out there that we endorse the waiver portion of Excel, Bessie can still do that in April without any policy. They've done it before. They don't need the entire Excel package completed and policy written to waive something. And we have all seen that in action. And so I want to see the policy written right. I would hate to endorse something in April that says, because that's why I asked the question. There are some fundamental differences because simple-minded old football coach, there's 6 bullets there and there's 75 pages of documentation there. We need to make sure we're on the same page, and I want to get it right. And if that means we get it right in June for next year's cohort, that would be my favor. I am not against someone making a motion to endorse a waiver. That ultimately is still Bessie's decision. But if this committee would like to endorse the waiver because we know it is critical, then I would be in favor of doing that. But ultimately, we can only endorse that. We can't force that upon Bessie.
So we have 2 potential substitute motions, but no seconds at the moment, so that.
We had a second, but
we
not
have-
a second to Mr.
But not a second to
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr. Hughes.
I did put forth a very strong supplemental motion, but you go with Mr. Byler.
So is that a
Okay, so can I get some help then with changing up the language of what I
Okay.
So I'm asking that we take a look at what can be done for the kids that are graduating in May, right? I think that's the top priority.
Extend the waiver.
Extend the waiver, however you want to say it, for those kids. But then also look at revamping the policy for future graduates. However, I don't know, help me with the language.
While we're fleshing that out, can I ask a question? Yes. Because I know that Ms. Shan brought up the fact, and I don't know, so I'm asking. Can a waiver, does Bessie have the authority to extend a waiver?
That was my question, and I think to her point, you cannot.
So if
In my
they don't-
opinion, I'm not the lawyer, this is gonna have to be something that they have to work out through Bessie and the state legislature, because absent some emergency, what we're proposing does have some legal hurdles.
Dr. Joseph, I certainly want to hear your motion and certainly could be behind it. I don't know yet. I'm a little confused about, I think we all are a little confused about what we're endorsing right now. The presentation was compelling. The data is compelling. I think there's a sense of urgency that might be compelling. I just don't know where we go with that right now, right? So I know that this has to be an escalated conversation. So that seems to be what we're asking to be done here, is to escalate as fast as we can some discussion and study and around this and what policy could take place, what policy changes might take place. I don't know what those policy changes would be. And I appreciate what Dr. Williams has said here. I don't even know if what we're suggesting here by the Excel group is enough. So if it's not, you don't want to park yourself in a place that you got to bring something back. So I've said nothing.
But you said it so much more eloquently.
So I'm a little concerned though that if we're asking Bessie to do something that really they don't even have the authority to do, then I would be concerned with us endorsing or suggesting that Bessie do something that it's clearly we know they can't.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree with what David said. I think the issue that we have is much more than just a program, right? So I do think we have to give Betsy, the state superintendent, some time to look at where all the impact will happen, because this is, for us to get this right, I do also believe that we should have a timeline. So I would probably suggest friendly, I guess, if we're going to endorse this, that the Betsy board and the state superintendent bring us back clear policies and whatever changes and shifts that would happen where we are endorsing for English language learners to accelerate, whatever that looks like, whether that's waivers or looking at the curriculum work that they're doing, or those pieces on a much more bigger package, so that we can be able to look at it in detail and get that information early, and how to talk to our team or our community folks to give some feedback in order for us to really change where the gap is. So I would probably just say, my concern when I hear things come up is, I don't like it to be in a date yet to be determined, because that usually means it never comes back. You have tremendous amount of issues that you have to resolve, so, you know, we could probably get an agreement on saying, maybe a proposed date, maybe this is something Dr. Buckley by, you know, I don't know, before the start of next school year, just to say how we can support and how we can get some feedback information to you guys, I think it would be great. The other suggestion also would make again, which I think you guys are in the right direction, is, as Dr. Williams shared before, you know, this is not new. We can, you know, I'm assuming you're already talking to multiple folks across the country that have had success in this, and so maybe coming back with some recommendations on where you see best practices and how that impacts our policies and our laws, et cetera, et cetera. So my suggestion would be is if we could bring this back, maybe whether it's June, July, whatever that date is, what would be in June? In June, some more specifics for us to go through, and we can have a much more robust discussion and go from there.
Are there any policies or any types of things that can happen for the kids, for the graduates for this May? Is there anything out?
Dr. Joseph, I was wondering the same thing, so I wondered if we were to create something, and look, I don't know if this is possible, but if something were to happen where what Dr. Narcissus suggested that maybe by June, and then Bessie adopts something, what is the Bessie meeting after April? What is the next one?
June.
June. Could it be something, you know, that helps this school year's graduates by grandfathering something in? You know, we have children that graduate in the summer anyway, you know, so just a thought there. So if we go slower, but fast enough to perhaps consider, and I don't know if that's possible either, Dr. Brumley, so I'm just throwing out ideas. Dr. Joseph and I have the same thought in my head. We do need to get this right, and the only sense of urgency we have right now is for our 23 graduates, and we don't want to exclude them if there's a way to include them somewhere.
Right, so we've heard a few additional comments along this, and Dr. Narcisse loosely, you can clarify, to bring back this, endorse something, but in terms of bringing it back to this committee in June, as well as bring some things back to Bessie so that we can have additional conversations around that. And hopefully, maybe as David said, to grandfather those students that will be potentially graduating, but graduate over the summer, ensure that the information is correct.
I would disagree with allowing Dr. Williams to give us some recommended policies.
For June?
So what is the motion?
I'm trying to get it. Is that a motion you're making?
Still floating out there.
I'm going to amend it to fit the group's thoughts, because, right, I mean, in my mind, it's two things, right? Can we look at what can happen with the kids for this May? But then, yeah, I do want a policy that is a good policy that makes sense, but also something that won't take forever. Something that can happen quickly.
It's my understanding that the motion is to endorse the Excel portion of the waiver, of the Excel proposal, and then to bring back to see some revisions in June.
To policy.
Policy revision.
Can you read that just one more time?
It's my understanding that it's to endorse the waiver portion of the Excel proposal, and then to bring back policy revisions for review in June.
So that would be a substitute motion to the motion that Dr.
That was her
I think we have amended it.
Can I ask along the same lines? I mean, you asked us what the motion was. If none of us spoke today and nobody threw out any amendments, nobody said anything, what would we be voting on? Because this says to consider revisions to Bulletin 112, but there are none. So I'm going to ask the same question. If we throw out everybody's substitute amendment, what would we be voting to endorse today from this? Like, and that's what I don't know. So, I mean, we don't know what we're doing, but, because we don't know what we're trying to come in and vote on. But there's nothing to vote on. Like, what is the department, like, what is the amendment from the department as well, is what I'm asking. That's not.
Yeah, we're not, this is not within our normal processes of timelines. in ways in which we prepare policy documents, because this was not our item initially. So all we can do at this point, based on the work that we've been able to do, because we're having to run parallel research work and looking at 50 states and answering everyone's questions, but also building policy. I think before this group votes on anything, and you go back to your own local communities and your own constituents and your own kids and stakeholders, you need to realize that if you're endorsing this proposal, you are endorsing the concept that we believe that a subgroup of our students in our state should not be required to show approaching basic proficiency in U.S. history, biology, English 1-2, or mathematics. And so I just want to raise that to your attention as you cast a vote here, because that is what you would be endorsing.
I would respectfully disagree with that. In terms of lowering standards, I don't see this as that when we're talking about children who are being asked to do academic performance in a language that they're not proficient in. And if our job is to get them proficient, then shame on us for not doing that, but still holding them to the same standard. So
but for clarity, what I said is on the assessment. I'm not talking about proficiency demonstrated in some other way. I'm saying if you endorse this particular pathway indicates that for a subgroup of the population, approaching basic proficiency is not required on LEAP 2025 for those students in U.S. history, biology, English 1-2, or geometry and algebra.
And so I would just say that language matters and framing matters. So you're not wrong. I hear what you're saying, but the framing of that is not the way I would see the endorsement. I would see this as prioritizing a group of vulnerable scholars who need English proficiency, language acquisition in order to be effective, reach mastery on the assessments that we require. And I do think that out of fairness and in terms of looking at them and meeting them where they are, and we talk a lot about individualized and personalized learning and differentiation and so forth. This is language differentiation, to where we're making sure that we're prioritizing that language acquisition as part of what our scholars need in order to be effective. So I think the framing of that would be what I would disagree with.
Other than the fact that our policy in Louisiana says that in order to graduate with a Louisiana high school diploma, you have to pass these pairs of LEAP 2025s. And that is what the debate is. The debate isn't, to me, measuring in other particular ways. The debate is that the appropriate measure or not for a diploma in our state? And right now, policy says that it is.
In law. So what I got from Mr. Narcisse is to endorse the Excel pathway in concept and bring back in June to the council a timeline and best practices for possible policy revisions.
And not the waiver. The waiver was included in that as well.
No. Did we have a second to that?
Comment.
Okay, anybody want to second his business? Okay. Yes.
A second.
Okay.
So can anybody from the department legal team clarify or would be willing to take a stab at, does DESE even have the authority? Is COVID, which still has impacts, absolutely, and at the same time, would they be willing or able to use COVID as an extenuating circumstance to even grant the waiver that the Excel commission or committee is asking for?
Yeah, we would be prepared to answer that today.
You know, I think that was a question that has been posed, and I think it's an extremely relevant question that we just don't know the answer to today.
And I think some thought came up, or some comments came up, even if it's not impacting May, as David indicated, we still have graduation in the summer. So we still can impact this class, and that answer could potentially be answered between now and July. or even August 31st for that matter.
Well, can we add that to the motion then, that Bessie or this department finds the answers to those questions
Yeah.
by a certain time so that the decision can be made on, you know,
So
the
even if
next
the answer is
decision?
no, it's no, but at least we know.
At least we know.
But wouldn't that come up in we're asking for policy revisions? I mean, they can put that in the policy revision, even if it's for our 22, 23 graduates. That could be in the policy. I mean, they've got to come back with policy recommendations. That would give them the time, what is legal, what is not legal, what are things that we can do? I mean, that could be part of the policy. We don't have to. We know we want that. I think they know that we want to do something for these graduates. We're putting it, I mean, we're asking the department to consider that when you write your policy. If it's not in the policy they bring back to us in June, then we probably, I mean, I would endorse it because we've asked them to figure out a way. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we do have till August 31st that a kid could get a graduation. You know, so I mean, I think by what we're asking to do, I think it does cover what you're asking.
I agree with you, but I think if we're specific enough, and it doesn't leave any ambiguity at all, you know, I think we just need to be very specific in what we're asking, so they don't have to go back and try to interpret what our intent was. And so even if the answer is no, I think that at least, you know, it's been addressed and we're fine with it, but at least we're specific in what we're asking, and we give the answer.
Yeah, so I'll put in policy revisions and including possibilities to address the 2023 graduates.
Could you read the whole thing again for everybody? Yeah. And the audience, because there may be a comment.
Okay, let's see. To endorse the Excel pathway in concept and to bring back to the council in June 2023 a timeline and best practices for possible policy revisions, including possibilities for 2023 graduates. Including possibilities to address the 2023 graduating class.
So we have a vote.
Does that sound good?
So
Do you accept that changes?
the word endorse there is the only one, I don't really know what it means, but if everybody else is, it's almost like we've received the Excel information and it's compelling. So we would like the Department and Board of Elementary Secondary Education to use the work of the Excel.
Okay, so how about endorse a possible alternate pathway for ELO students?
Using the Excel.
Using the Excel model.
Using the information. Using information and other research, and potentially other research.
But wouldn't he have to make a substitute motion? I mean, we have a motion and a second on the floor, and Mr. Alexander, in essence, is changing the entire meaning
Yeah,
and
this was a friendly,
value
I was using,
of that.
Robert's
So-
rule does allow for friendly amendments, and if he's willing to accept it, that's how I was handling it. I mean, we could.
Well, that should be like my original motion, what we're all saying. What you're saying.
Yours won't be captured. Okay, we got it now?
So we have a motion,
Yes.
a substitute motion, and a second, right? So we do have a
Ms.
second,
Williams
correct?
is a second.
Okay, all right.
Anyone opposed?
Well, do we need additional comment from the public?
Oh, they can,
So
yeah.
that's, any comment from the public? Okay, no comment.
So, I'm sorry, but just to be clear, so we're pulling from a motion that says consideration for revision to Bulletin 112. We're pulling from that and saying, there's this presentation out there that everybody hasn't been privy to, and the motion is to endorse the concept of that. Okay. That's what the motion is.
We pull the word
I
endorse
don't think everybody thinks.
No, they did.
But that is what the motion is.
You're endorsing the concept of an alternate pathway for
E
Not
ELL
maybe one in
students,
particular, considering several options.
using Excel as a starting point, so to speak.
So we're endorsing a concept of an alternate pathway for graduation for U.S. students.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So then I just sort of have a question from the LDOE perspective. You all are simply saying, we're considering some things because Bessie has directed us to do that. How does that then change? Does it change the approach if this committee endorses, you're doing this anyway, right? So it really doesn't change anything or any trajectory of how you are going to move forward.
Other than taking the time here to listen to the feedback and conversation.
Well, what you're doing is advising the board, Mr. Jeffrey, Dr. Jeffrey, on that y'all have this policy coming in April, and this is what we think about it.
Yeah.
It's a policy revision. is what we're suggesting.
So then I have another question. Is a policy going to be presented to Bessie in April? Because I don't think that has been explicitly stated to us as well.
I believe that would depend on the motion from the last meeting that
Which is,
Shannon
the motion was to bring back policy recommendations. The recommendation could be that we study it further. It just, yeah.
Y'all, it is almost April. And Bessie, LDOE has to do a thorough investigation into this. They're trying to gather information from 50 states. And again, what was presented today and what I very, very briefly read last evening when I received the email is compelling, important, and I just don't think it should be rushed. I think that we should make slow, steady, thoughtful decisions around this very important topic.
So this motion is asking, though, for us to revisit this in June. Is that correct?
No, you're saying you endorse the concept and to bring back a timeline and best practices for possible policy revisions. That's what they're gonna bring in June. And now if they wanna bring policy, they can do that. The board might bring policy in April if it comes to them, I don't know. But this is what you're recommending, is my opinion.
We're recommending to have this discussion again in June, please.
And endorse the concept of an alternate pathway.
Based
I
on.
do, and I strongly believe that we have to have a timeline because there are students, as you all know, sitting in the waiting in the wings. So I do like Dr. Narcisse's point of a timeline for any discussion or consideration.
Mr. Jenkins, I know you'll eventually just take the mic from me. But I think that it's important, if we're gonna consider, if Bessie is gonna consider this, and I understand you can have summer graduates, but the value of participation in the actual graduation ceremony with the class is extremely important and valuable. And so unless Bessie plans to make changes to current policy now, these students will not have that privilege. And so I think that that's something also very important to consider.
And again, to David's point, this is also promulgated in state law. I don't know that, so I just want to put that out there. We're making recommendations to a body that has to answer to a legislative body that's about to go into session. And most of this is state law driven.
Any other
And
comments?
that's why we have possibilities to address.
Okay. All right, the last time. We're going to read that for us. So we know we voted on it. I think we still have some.
Policy endorse an alternate pathway in concept for ELL students and request that the department bring back a timeline and best practices regarding policy revisions, including possibilities to address the 2023 graduates requirements.
We have a motion and a second. Any, any opposition?
Can you just read that one more time, please? I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
to endorse the alternate pathway for ELL students in concept. You're endorsing the concept of it as presented, as a basis for the Excel folks.
Okay, but that's where I caution. In the first reading, I didn't specifically hear Excel, and I may have just missed it, but you did just say Excel here.
Do you want to, I thought someone said I think David said that he wanted to use that as a starting point.
I just want us to be clear on the motion that we're gonna vote on.
I think that was David's, we inserted the Excel.
Could we
Do
get,
you want
I think this is too important to just vote without actually knowing the exact language, how it's written, and how it's gonna be shown in writing what this committee has done.
It seems that we're all in favor of some sort of alternate pathway emerging in policy.
And that's the way the end concept is there.
And Excel has provided some guidelines and possibilities to what that alternate pathway could look like. I'm not endorsing that the Excel pathway is the final pathway. I'm not ready to do that, even though it's very strong and it's very good. I'm not ready to just endorse that pathway. But we all recognize the fact that we need to create some opportunities here that maybe don't exist, an alternate pathway.
Would it be more simple to just say that the Superintendent Advisory Council is in support of this agenda item? Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 112, Louisiana Connection for English Language Learners regarding the Excel graduation policy and any potential associated waiver. Just to say that we're in support of that, the way that agenda item is written. That's not an endorsement of any particular pathway or anything. I think there are a lot of other areas that we need to discuss around this. So I want to be very careful as to one particular. But all that we were being asked today to consider on this agenda was consideration of revisions to Bulletin 112 regarding the Excel graduation policy and potential associated waivers. Not an endorsement of any one particular thing. It's just we support the LDOE looking at considerations.
You need an action verb, so on motion of Mr. Narcisse, second by Ms. Williams. SAC what? What would be your next word?
Am I correct in saying that our two options are either to receive or to endorse?
Correct.
Or to not support, or recommend revisions,
Or
or?
not to, or to say we do not endorse.
But it has to be endorsed. We can say support. A little bit of difference in the language there for me.
I just want to be mindful of protocol, and then we don't start stretching protocol to the extent that.
Well, I want us to stay germane to what we were presented today.
Well, that's why the in concept and alternate pathway, you're endorsing an alternate pathway in concept, because you don't really have any bullets of language.
We're endorsing revisions to Bulletin 112 that would consider an alternate pathway for EL students for graduation.
And stop.
Stop right.
Right.
Okay.
So we're not considering the kids who are going to graduate this year?
It says and potential
I
associated waiver.
don't think this body has any authority on this.
So, well, it's just, I think.
If we can look at a policy that eventually allows that to be grandfathered in, I think we're all in favor.
But we don't know what the policy.
So just a little caution, and I don't want to call you by your first name, but I have to. I think she indicated that there were 4 potential bulletins that we were looking at, not just bulletin 112. So I wrote down 3 of them. I may have missed one, 118, 118, 741, 112, and I didn't write the 4th one down. But there were 4 potential bulletins.
Policy revisions that include all bullets, all related bulletins that we
Endorse policy revisions.
Could you repeat what you were saying, Jeff?
Or did you
I
say-
just read what was on the agenda.
But again, the agenda actually calls out Excel graduation policy as that policy exists. That policy doesn't, it's just a suggestion from a group that is very well educated on this topic. Right.
So we have a substitute motion for Mr. Park. And could you
Yeah, I
restate it,
need
and
to
we're gonna see if we get a
restate,
second?
The other one was a lot
And
clearer.
if we don't have a second, then we can vote on the first. So we have a substitute motion for Mr. Powers. Go
Just that we've received this, motion to consider the revisions in bullet point. That's all. That's all.
Oh, we already have that.
Yeah.
So we have a
So we
substitute.
still have a
Yeah,
substitute.
I think David offered something that maybe a little bit more.
Well, I think to Dr. Joseph's point, your language could potentially have left out the potential waiver for current graduates. Is that right, Dr. Joseph?
I don't remember what. Yeah.
No, because in the minutes, you're gonna say, including possibilities for 20, what we had
The
was,
possibilities, not, yeah, can you do something about those kids this year? Not,
So then are we asking the committee to endorse considerations of revisions to Bulletin 112 regarding graduation policy for identified ELL students and potential associated waivers?
So I think what I said was, we are endorsing that there be a consideration for an alternate pathway for EL students to include Bulletin 112 and any related bulletins that would have to be moved into that. And where appropriate, consider grandfathering to, I don't know how to say that, but where appropriate, consider this year's graduates. But we realize that nothing's going to happen, or we're not expecting anything to happen in this body by April. We're asking, the ask here is that LDOE would bring back policy revisions to us by June to perhaps endorse those revisions in a detailed package. So we're endorsing the concept here that there should, we do, if we
that's
can.
what we have.
And that's what Dr. Emerson
That's what Dr. Marcy said.
Yeah, we're back where we started.
Endorse the concept of an alternate pathway, have the timeline and best practices presented, including policy revisions presented in June, and include any possibilities for 2023 graduates.
I like
Good.
it.
So we are.
that's been it.
Yeah.
That's the motion. That's the
Dr. Marcy's motion, go for it.
All right.
Call for question on that.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. There's no motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, Stephen.